My name is Lenora Hale, and I'm 31 years old. I've always been the person people call when something breaks physically, emotionally, digitally, spiritually. I'm the one who knows where the spare screws are, which outlet hides the mystery breaker, and how to calm a printer that jams only when surgeons are having a bad day. I work in hospital IT, where emergencies beep but don't bleed. My friends call me dependable. My parents say the same thing, but with a tone that feels less like praise and more like instruction. I live in my grandfather's old brick house on Birch Lane. A steep roof, a one-car garage that still smells like oil and old baseballs, and floorboards that creak like they're telling secrets. I moved in 2 years before he died, back when the stairs turned cruel, and dates began sliding off his memory like water off glass. I meant to stay for a couple of weeks. But temporary is a word families use when they mean forever. I set up a cot in this guest room, then a real bed, then a routine. Pills at 8 and 8. Physical therapy on Tuesdays. Trash on Fridays. A whiteboard on the fridge to keep the fear still. A notebook titled Birch Lane Care, where I recorded every symptom, every appointment, every moment he forgot something he once knew by heart. He called me Buddy when his voice got small and tired, when names slipped away from him like birds flying out of an open window. Sometimes he'd call me from his room just to hear footsteps. Sometimes he'd confuse me with his brother, dead since 1993. Other nights, he'd try to wander outside until I tied a small bell to the back door. I learned to take 5-minute showers. That was how long he could be alone without worrying the house would swallow him whole. When he died that spring, quiet, as if even his breath knew not to wake the house, I felt the ground shift. The funeral was short. He hated long speeches. The will was simple. He left little things to people who showed up, and he left the house to me with a line scrawled in shaky pen. Because you stayed. The lawyer read it aloud, and I had to step outside to breathe. My mother's mouth tightened at the word house. My father shook my hand like we were strangers negotiating a contract. My younger sister, Sophie, hugged me with a breezy, "Congrats," the same tone people use before wishing you luck in a hurricane. For a while, the house was a museum of him. His sounds, his dents, his breath. The percolator that sputtered. The hallway's second board that squeaked. The rose bush he claimed bloomed better when people were kind. I watered it. I sat on the back steps at dusk, listening to the soft hum of his absence. Then came the just thinking texts. Mom, just thinking prices won't stay this high forever. Dad, just thinking Sophie and Caleb found a house. Maybe we should leverage Birch Lane while rates are up. Sophie, just thinking we could put your house in a family trust. You can stay for a bit, then we transfer it to me later. Win-win. Protected from what? I wanted to ask. From me? But I didn't say that. I said nothing. Then 3 Sundays ago, we had dinner at my parents' house. Same wooden table where I'd done homework. Same dent where Dad dropped a wrench in 2004. Mom cooked roast chicken, green beans drowning in garlic, and a grocery store pie she insisted tasted homemade enough. I brought bread and salad, my lane, carbs and something green. Sophie breezed in late, smelling expensive and glowing like she practiced it in a mirror. She unlocked her phone before sitting down. "You won't believe this house," she said, showing photos like a real estate agent. Arched doorways, oak floors, a pantry like Narnia. Mom touched her arm with that gentle, proud gesture she saves only for Sophie. "Tell your sister," she said. I looked. The photos were beautiful, like they belonged in a magazine. "Nice," I said, because that's the role I play when Sophie's dreams need applause. After pie, Mom cleared her throat. The signal. "Meeting time, Lenora," she said softly. My stomach tightened. "We've been talking about the house." "My house," I said, though my voice barely rose. "The one Grandpa left you," Dad corrected, folding his hands like he was about to pray. "Birch Lane." "It's a lot for one person," Mom added. "The taxes, the yard. You work so hard, honey. It's heavy." "It's a free house," Sophie chimed in. "A blessing. You could do something generous with it." Dad leaned in. "We think the smart move is to sell Birch Lane and use the equity for Sophie's down payment. Rates are brutal right now. Timing is everything for the family." Grandpa's words, "because you stayed," echoed behind my ribs. "He left it to me," I said, "for a reason." "You did take such good care of him," Mom said quickly, "and we appreciate that so much, truly, but he'd want to help all of us." "It's not empty," I said, calm but shaking. "I live there." Sophie tilted her head, pitying and annoyed. Lenora, stop being selfish. That's a free house. Either share it or... Her voice faltered. Mom blurted the rest, as if the words shoved their way out. Or you're not my daughter anymore. Silence dropped like a stone. Dad forced a laugh. Nobody's disowning anyone, he said too cheerfully, the way people talk when something is breaking in the room. We already found a great realtor, Mom continued, relieved to return to the plan. She'll come next Sunday at 2. Top 1% in your area. Sunday at 2, she repeated, locking the time in place like a nail. I heard you, I said, though it felt like I was drowning. Dad clapped once. Good girl. I stacked plates. I wiped counters. Cleaning is my inhaler when my pulse misbehaves. At the door, Mom hugged me tightly, perfumed and smiling. Don't be dramatic, she whispered. Houses are just boxes. Outside, the porch light flickered twice, like even the house disagreed. On my drive home, the streetlights hung low like tired moons. My phone buzzed with a new message in the family chat. Don't forget your house key Sunday so the realtor can measure windows. No question mark, no if, just a schedule. At home, I placed a hand on Grandpa's workbench, fingers tracing every little dent he'd made through the years. I opened the drawer where I kept the will and read his shaky handwriting again. Because you stayed. I sank to the kitchen floor, back against the fridge, and stared at the dark window until the stove clock blinked midnight. Something inside me, a small tired part I had ignored for years, finally whispered back, I don't want to stay quiet anymore. The week after that dinner felt like living inside a countdown clock. Every message, every vibration of my phone, every passing day pulled me closer to Sunday at 2. Their chosen hour, their plan, their assumption that the house was already theirs. Ethan noticed immediately. We were sitting on my couch, the one with springs that squeaked whenever you shifted your weight. Grandpa's couch, the one he refused to replace because old things stay honest. Ethan rested his arm along the back, watching me scroll through a chain of messages from my family. They're doing it again, he said quietly. Doing what? Deciding your life and calling it compromise. I wanted to defend them. I wanted to defend myself. Instead, I just said, it's complicated. He nodded, the way people do when they can see your excuses are made of paper. Ethan wasn't pushy. He never tried to take the wheel from me, but he knew when something was crushing me long before I admitted it. He squeezed my hand. You don't deserve this weight, Len. I wanted to believe him, but the role of good daughter has grooves worn into it, like a place my shoulders naturally fit, even when it hurts. That night, Sophie sent a voice memo. Her tone was sweet, weaponized sugar. Lenora, she cooed. I know Mom blurted out something harsh. She's stressed. Focus on the big picture, okay? Family first. And I'd do the same for you. I laughed once. She already had a house she planned to paint white and knock walls down in. This wasn't helping the family. This was Sophie expanding her square footage. Then Mom texted, be decent. Dad left a voicemail about the greater good, as if we were on some mission trip or corporate retreat. Pressure layered itself over my lungs. By Wednesday, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a stage someone else built a script for. Whenever I passed the hallway, I half expected blue painter's tape to appear again. Whenever I washed dishes, I heard Mom's whisper, houses are just boxes. Boxes aren't supposed to have memories stamped into the floors. Boxes aren't supposed to hold your grief, your routines, the echoes of someone's fading voice. The next day, Sophie brought her boyfriend to visualize the remodel. I wasn't home when it happened. A neighbor texted me a picture, Sophie pointing at the siding like a general inspecting her new territory. No permission, no heads up, just entitlement dressed as optimism. That night, something inside me snapped with a quiet, exhausted click. I pulled out my old notebook, Birch Lane Care, and beside each medical note for Grandpa, I added something else. Property tax, $4,924. Water heater, $1,080. Roof patch, $740. Gutters, $144. Furnace repair, $285. Security system, $390 plus monthly. Electrician, $360. Miscellaneous, over $12,200. $9,132. I stared at the total until the numbers blurred. I hadn't done it to resent him. I hadn't kept receipts to prove anything. I'd done it because lists make fear stand still. But reading it all, for the first time, I felt the weight of how alone I'd been. My phone buzzed again. Mom, family decision we list in September. Realtor Sunday at 2. Be decent. Be decent, be obedient, be quiet. I closed the notebook. The next morning, I called the number a coworker had once whispered to me with a look that meant, "You'll need this someday." Attorney Ms. Beck wore square glasses and a patience that didn't feel condescending. After I finished explaining, she flipped through the will, the deed, the documents. Then she looked up. "The house is yours," she said simply. "You don't have to show it. You don't have to list it. And if anyone tries to do so without your permission, call me." "They'll say I'm selfish?" Ms. Beck folded her hands. "That's a word people use when your boundaries stop benefiting them." It hit me harder than I expected, like someone opening a window in a house I'd been suffocating in. When I left her office, I felt something close to oxygen. That afternoon, I rummaged through my nightstand and found a birthday card I'd forgotten about. Aunt Lydia, the relative my parents called dramatic, difficult, too much, had sent it 3 years earlier. Inside were 2 filer bills taped neatly and 4 crooked words in her spiky handwriting. "You are not a mule." I stared at it for a long time. Then I slipped the card in my pocket. The next morning I called her. She answered on the second ring, saying my name slowly, as if verifying it really was me. "You good?" she asked. Her voice had the same sturdiness it always carried, like she saved softness for emergencies. "No," I said. We met at a diner off Route 7, the kind with cracked red seats and pancake syrup that tasted like childhood. Lydia slid into the booth like someone who expected to be asked to leave but wasn't. We ordered eggs. I talked. She listened. Elbows on the table, chin in her hands, face steady. No theatrics, no raised eyebrows, no gas-filled interruptions. Just presence. When I finally stopped talking, she said the question no one else had asked. "What do you want, Lenora?" I exhaled shakily. "I want quiet," I said. "I want Birch Lane not to be a stage. I want to stop being the mule." Lydia smiled. "Then stop." "I can't sell it to them," I whispered. "I can't drive by someday and see their names on the mailbox. It would break something in me." "Then don't," she said easily. "Sell it to me." I blinked. "You're serious?" "I've been saving," she said. "I rent a 1-bedroom above a florist. It smells like lilies and loneliness. I want a yard, a garage, a kitchen. I can paint any color." I laughed through my shock. "This would cause a war." "No," she said. "This would end one." We met with Ms. Beck that Thursday. Lydia named a fair price. No lowball, no manipulation, just clean intention. The papers were stamped, each one sounding like small thunder. Afterward, I walked through the house, one last slow lap. I packed only what mattered: the percolator, Grandpa's pocket knife, the photos, the notebook. I left the squeaky couch. Lydia loved it. On my way out, I found an old Polaroid of my mother at 20, laughing on the porch. I slipped it into my wallet. Sunday at 2 was approaching, and for the first time, I wasn't the one who would be waiting inside. Sunday at 2 arrived like a storm I'd already lived through in a dream. I parked my car a short distance down Birch Lane, far enough to stay out of sight, but close enough to witness everything. The sky was a flat, pale blue. One of those quiet days where even the air seems to brace for something. I waited under the big oak tree across the street, the one Grandpa used to call the Old Sentinel. Its branches cast dappled shadows over my shoes. My heart thudded in my chest with a strangely calm rhythm. It wasn't peace. It was acceptance. At 1:58, my parents' SUV pulled up. Mom got out first, smoothing her blouse with the same motion she used whenever preparing for a performance. Dad followed, clipboard under his arm. He liked props when he felt important. Sophie climbed out last in oversized sunglasses, holding her phone like she was live streaming her own victory. Behind them, a sleek black sedan arrived. The realtor stepped out in a sharp blazer, confidence radiating off her like perfume. Sophie clapped her hands together. "I can't wait to see the light in the living room again," she chirped. Her living room. I felt the old familiar burn rise in my chest, but this time it didn't swallow me. Instead, it strengthened my spine. At precisely 2:00 p.m., the front door opened. Aunt Lydia stood in the doorway, wearing Grandpa's flannel, keys jingling at her side, hands already smudged with what looked like soil. She must have started tending the rosebush that morning. The realtor blinked in confusion. My mother's face collapsed. What is this?" Mom demanded. Dad froze mid-stride, the clipboard slipping slightly in his grip. Sophie recovered first. "Who are you?" she snapped. Though she knew exactly who Lydia was, the relative they banned from holidays for boundary issues. Lydia lifted the deed. "My house," she said calmly. "Can I help you?" Mom turned ghost pale. Her voice cracked like thin glass. This is a joke. Lenora would never. She would, Lydia cut in. She did. Sophie spun, eyes searching the street until she found me beneath the oak. You sold it to her? She screamed, stepping toward me in her heeled boots like she planned to stomp the truth out of the ground. I stepped forward from the shade, finally visible. I did. Mom's voice rose an octave. You did this to hurt us. No, I said quietly, the words steady as a closed door. I did this to end it. Dad stepped toward me with his hands out like a peacekeeper. Lenora, sweetheart, you're making an emotional decision. We could have found a compromise. No, I said again. You didn't want compromise. You wanted control. He flinched like I'd slapped him, though I hadn't touched him at all. Sophie crossed her arms, furious tears forming. You picked her over us. I shook my head slowly. I picked me. For a moment, everything fell silent. The kind of heavy silence that comes right before someone realizes the world won't ever go back to the way it was. Then Mom started crying, loud, dramatic sobs that echoed across the lawn. She clung to Dad's arm. She's punishing us, she wailed. Punishing? For the first time in my life, I realized they truly believed that. Ethan appeared quietly at my side. He'd parked down the block, giving me space, but staying close in case things went sideways. He didn't speak, but his presence grounded me. My mother noticed him and pointed accusingly. This is because of him, isn't it? He poisoned you against your own family. Ethan took my hand. Not forceful, not territorial, just supportive. No one had to poison her, he said. She finally listened to herself. Sophie let out a frustrated choke sound. This is unbelievable. We counted on that house. There it was, the truth wrapped in entitlement. You shouldn't have, I replied. It wasn't yours. Mom covered her mouth like she'd witnessed a murder. You're choosing outsiders over blood. Lydia raised an eyebrow. Funny, considering the only person who asked what she wanted wasn't family at all. Dad tried again. We've always done everything for you. I stared at him, remembering property taxes begged off me with promises of, we'll pay you back. The water heater, the roof, the nights I slept in, fear that Grandpa would wander into the street. Everything? I echoed softly. What exactly did you think I was doing all those years? He swallowed hard. Mom cried harder. Sophie glared like she'd been swindled out of a palace. I didn't owe them more words. My legs felt strangely light as I turned and walked toward my car. Behind me, the porch light clicked off. A period. The end of a sentence I'd been trapped inside for years. I didn't check my phone until later that night. 17 missed calls, 34 text messages, 6 emails. Mom's voicemail sounded like a eulogy. Dad sent a document titled What We've Done for You. Sophie sent a $60,000 Venmo request labeled House Fund. I stared at that one for a full 10 seconds before pressing decline. Soon after, a message came from Ms. Beck. All legal threats unfounded. Deed transferred for fair market value. Further contact through counsel only if necessary. Precise, calm, resolute. Silence followed. A cleansing kind of silence. The kind that leaves room for your own breathing. The next morning, I woke up in Lydia's guest room, my temporary space until I found a place of my own. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, soft and forgiving. For the first time in what felt like years, I slept 7 hours. I made breakfast sitting down. I took a walk without checking my phone. I wrote a short list titled, Things That Are Mine. My time, my quiet, my boundaries, my Sundays, my sleep, my yes, my no. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't betrayal. It was closure. It was choosing myself. It was moving the lock to the inside of my life and keeping the key in my pocket.